In the 1970s, mobile home living in Pima County promised a smooth entry into the dream of home ownership. Working families and retirees could buy standalone homes in vibrant communities without the crushing cost of a traditional mortgage. 50 years later, mobile homes are the largest source of non-subsidized affordable housing in the region. But as time has gone on, park infrastructure and homes built decades ago have aged. And crucially, Tucson has gotten hotter. That's left many residents in a deadly bind.
A manufactured home is a factory-built home on a permanent chassis that was built after 1976. And this is when the federal government put in place basically a universal national housing code for a particular type of housing, right? Before that, there was factory-built housing on permanent chassis, but it wasn't regulated at the national level. So it might not have even been regulated at all, but it was basically a patchwork quilt of regulatory standards for this housing type. And as a result of that, oftentimes the standards were very low. There were no requirements for them to have any insulation. The wiring was low quality aluminum wiring, or materials that were not really well suited to the Southwest desert region.
We're burning up over here.
Yeah,
it's hot.
Es como una bomba de tiempo. El calor es súper, pero súper caliente.
It's horrible. I think I recorded 87 in the trailer with the thermometer.
Extreme heat events are actually the #1 weather-related killer in this country.
Por esa razón te puedo decir que es muy peligroso.
The thing that really sets Tucson apart as a site of manufactured housing is how much of it there is for a city of our size. We're the only city in the United States, last time I checked, with a Metro Tucson being just over 1 million people, with more than 10% of its housing stock in manufactured housing. We also have certain areas of the city that are totally dominated by manufactured housing. For instance, the area of Flowing Wells, the dominant housing form there is manufactured housing. There's no other housing type that is more common than manufactured housing. So we really have these sort of sub-areas of the cities that are of Metro Tucson that are basically manufactured housing cities within a city.
What began as a dream of affordable independence has, over decades, become a dangerous reality. In 2024, Tucson had 112 days of 100-degree-plus heat, more than any year on record so far, according to the National Weather Service. The story of Hummingbird Harvest shows the tragic stakes of heat in Tucson's mobile home parks. In July 2024, the small North Tucson park experienced an 11-day electricity outage. During that time, temperatures soared above 105 degrees. On August 7th, one of the park's residents was found dead inside his home. Paul Dakin was 70 years old. There was no electricity in his home and no air conditioning. The official cause, environmental heat exposure.
In epidemiology, we're looking at things like their social determinants of health and their environmental determinants of health, and seeing how those came into play with how they were exposed to what made them sick, whether it be lead in their water or excessive heat exposure. We know that as folks age, they become more vulnerable to heat. That's both just an effect of aging, but also the fact that older adults tend to have those chronic conditions, so they're more vulnerable to heat-related illnesses and potentially dying of those things a lot more than the younger population.
Between May 2023 and September 2024, heat was a factor in 114 indoor deaths across Pima County, according to Arizona Luminaria's analysis of medical examiner data. Nearly a third of those deaths happened in mobile homes or RVs, far out of proportion to the number of mobile homes in the region.
People have very long not recognized that extreme heat events are actually the #1 weather-related killer in this country. We always think about tornadoes and hurricanes because we see all of the infrastructure destruction, but it affects populations and people the most.
Residents may have ACs in their homes, but whether the park's electricity grid can keep up with usage or meters can give accurate readings depends on park management.
The electric has been going off for 3 to 4
But
years.
this is the worst year.
It was constant for June. It was constant every day.
Every day.
Every day. Like,
Sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes more.
the 2-year-old, she told me, "Mommy, I'm hot." And I was like, we're getting in the car. And I got the 3 of them in the car and with the AC on. I suffered enough, but not my kids.
How do you cope?
You go outside, you don't even know what's hot outside. Spray yourself with
No,
water bottles.
that's
Or
about it.
go to somebody's house.
Yeah, we go.
I put my little one in the tub.
The way that people need to start thinking about heat in Tucson, Pima County, Arizona is a little bit more seriously, because it's not necessarily about how hot the high is during the day, but about the duration and how many days that it's hot or how cool it gets at night. And so we don't necessarily have the same sense of reprieve that we had before. And those are things that are both impacts of climate change, and then also the heat island effect and radiant heat are much more extreme in these areas where we have mobile home and manufactured housing.
As the heat rises and with it the risk of heat-related deaths, local governments and advocates are working to inform vulnerable communities about extreme weather. In 2024, a coalition of mobile home resident advocacy groups and academics studying the issue helped change state law to mitigate the impact of extreme heat. The new law barred landlords from restricting certain kinds of air conditioners or cooling devices because they were noisy or unsightly. And this summer, Tucson, Pima County, and nonprofit partners held a series of door knockings to educate residents about the dangers of heat.
We call these like heat canvassing events. We get groups of volunteers to go out into surrounding neighborhoods in the community, and they essentially give out heat safety information packets.
This year, we're doing it based on data, and we're out here to be able to prevent deaths and heat-related illnesses. We're really distributing this heat in areas of our city where we have traditionally seen 911 calls related to heat. And so this is where we see the most need.
Morning. We're just giving out information on like the heat and on cooling stations and stuff like that.
Hello, good morning. Anybody home? De cómo protegerse ahorita con el calor. We know that some of the mobile homes here are a little bit isolated and disconnected from each other. And so the more information people have and the more the community stays connected, the less likely heat illness comes up.
Well, I grew up in a manufactured home in the area of Yuma, Somerton, Arizona, and so I personally know how hot they can get, and many of them are old and are not up to par in terms of the living conditions.
I think it's something that makes us feel like we're making a difference, and if we can provide a little bit of information, a cooling tower to keep people cool during these triple-digit temperatures, I think it's worthwhile.
We've seen the number of heat-related illnesses and heat-related deaths continue to trend upward in a way that is very concerning for us.
So I'm just gonna leave information right here.
The region is getting hotter and more expensive. Without protections, mobile home residents are on the front lines of both.
It's frustrating because you're like, how do I keep my kids cool? Or, how do we keep ourselves cool?
This is the last affordable housing. There is no place that's cheaper than this. My name's Kimberly Lucas. I live at
Friendly Village Estates, and I've been here since October of 2021. I'm from Chicago, south suburbs. I lived in Sauk Village all my life, and I taught at the local high school there. My parents have been down here since '88, and I would come almost every year and visit when I had time off. I came because my parents were getting elderly, and so my mom needed some help when my dad got sick. I always knew I'd come and help them, but I didn't think I'd live in their park. I was looking for a bigger home in here, and I found this 1970, and it was completely untouched. Well, when I bought this, it was $40,000 for just the blank shell. Yeah, and it needed all kinds of work. And I went ahead and dumped another $40,000 in it.
Across southern Arizona, mobile home communities have become spaces for intergenerational living and, for many, an accessible chance at home ownership. But when residents have a dispute with their landlord, whether it be about utility bills or lot rent prices, they're often left to find solutions on their own.
If I do something on the property, I have to have their permission to do it first, unless it's replacing what's existing already. But yet they don't pay for anything. So it's all my cost, but I'm restricted by their rules.
When did you kind of realize that dynamic?
Right, not till I got in here and got my first 1530. A 1530 is a warning that if you don't follow our rules within 15 days, we will evict you in 30. The process is super fast. I think they pay a $73 fee or something, a $65 fee, and ask to evict a person. Within 3 days, they're in court.
Silver King, the owners of Friendly Village Estates, did not respond to a request for comment. After years of organizing, residents' complaints about the little recourse available in disputes with park owners have caught the attention of the state's top lawyer. In a Tucson town hall in the spring of 2025, Attorney General Chris Mays confronted stories of predatory landlords and life-destroying bills.
These town halls are important that the AGs are having, because I do think housing discrimination is a significant piece of the problem. And I believe that many people have been made homeless by this.
The landlords are throwing us out. They're making things up, and I'm not kidding.
I was too frightened to be just me against them.
The reason for that is the intimidation.
So if I violate their rules and they kick me out of their property, I can't get back in here. It's called trespassing. Therefore, how do I sell my house? Because it's on their property, it's abandoned and they take ownership.
I got evicted, and it's over back utilities, but they didn't have the meter readings or anything. And I ended up getting evicted off of that because I couldn't pay because I'm on SSI.
I think this is an all hands on deck problem, and it clearly is something that is an existential threat and problem for Pima County.
Challenging utility bills during an eviction proceeding is difficult, and the burden of proof often falls on residents. In addition, the speed of the eviction process, where a hearing can be set just days after a landlord files a complaint, can make it difficult to find legal representation. That's what happened to Roseanne Aldama.
No, this is not right. There is no justice for the poor, only for the rich. They can afford a lawyer. We can't afford a lawyer. We have nobody to back us up. I already tried everything. So now from me having a home to living on a driveway, that's where I live now.
Aldama lived in Desert Shore's mobile home park for 7 years. She was in a rent-to-own program, just 10 months away from owning her home outright when the eviction notice came.
Growing up, we did a lot of moving, a lot of evictions, because when they wanted to raise your rent and everything and you couldn't afford it, well, then it was time to vacate. I moved in Desert Shore in 2017.
Each time we'd get a new manager, the rent would go up, and then I'd seen the bill of $730. You know, gas kept on going higher or lower, and at one point my light went up to, I think, 400. So by the time they racked up so much that when I got out of there, I owed them over $6,000.
In a statement, Skyline Real Estate disputed Aldama's details about her gas charges and said she was evicted for non-payment of rent. In August 2024, the Attorney General ordered Skyline to credit money back to residents in another park owned by the company, saying they were overcharged for water.
At the end of October, I went into eviction court, but they wouldn't get my payment. And the judge said, well, you should have saved them. I go, you know what? At the end, I had to use the money to go find somewhere else to live.
Roseanne Aldama lost her home. She started over in a shed on borrowed land, where she works on a tenant resource guide and advocates for manufactured home residents, all while stringing together access to basic utilities like water and power.
This is the shed. And like I said, I used the money to find this place.
And do you own this?
No, I don't. This one right here, I put down $150, and it's $191 a month, and $206 for the toilet, which is going to be going up because if you see all the flies, because it's a porta potty, so I got to wait for them to service it. It is safer than being out in the street, and by the time I'm done, I hardly have anything left in my check.
So this right now does not have power or running water.
It has nothing. It's just somewhere to stay in, so I don't stay outside.
Aldama's experience, while stark, is not unusual.
My mom always says, justice is for the rich, not for the poor. So you gotta make things work because there's no justice for you.
Overbilling of electricity in master meter parks is appalling. Master meters are a total opportunity for unscrupulous landlords to take advantage of tenants, and they're doing that.
Oftentimes, the customer of the utility is the owner of the park, and so they're paying TEP, and then they hire a sub-metering company that then decides how much of that total bill each of the individual residents need to pay.
We were bringing the issue to the table that they have the ability and are currently trying to make as much money as they can off their utilities.
There's a big issue with fraudulent utility bills in master meter parks.
Your bill had 3 items: rent, electric, and gas. Now, there's 17 items.
Yeah, we're seeing utilities that normally would be $125 a month going as high as $900 a month.
It's not an aberration. I think it's more common than not that someone loses their home from the eviction. And I think in some ways, it feels like you're the last line of defense, not because other people don't have the power, but because they're not using the power.
I wish I wasn't your last line of defense. I wish that we had a stronger set of laws on this, but I do have laws that I can enforce.
We want the world to know that we're fighting this because we can't afford not to fight it.
Organizers point to 2 troubling flashpoints in particular. One is electricity outages amid the heat of summer. The other is fraudulent or contested utility bills, where residents who get a high bill in a park where utilities are sub-metered are often left to negotiate with their landlord. And if they don't pay the requested amount, they can face eviction and lose their home. In Tucson, a grassroots network that includes mobile home residents themselves is working to change that system by educating families, especially Spanish-speaking residents, about their rights.
Nosotros como Poder Casas Móviles educamos a la comunidad acerca de sus derechos, por decir, si algo te está faltando, por decir, has tenido un cordón eléctrico, tú tienes el derecho de reportarlo con tu manager.
It's a group that's predominantly people who live or have spent extensive time living in manufactured housing and understand the issues that people are facing and do the work with a lot of compassion and care.
Estamos ayudando a personas que están a nuestro mismo nivel. Y yo creo que también eso hace más fuerte la relación con ellos.
We see there's so little case law in eviction court. Some of that is because the vast majority of people, even if they have very, very valid claims, are not able to appeal because it's cost prohibitive, because it's a quick turnaround time, and because a lot of people are in a state where they're focused on having a place to live. And we really are able to help share some of that risk with people by providing completely free services. And we can provide limited scope housing and eviction legal advice.
Empezaremos con el abogado del parque, luego le escucharemos a usted y luego tomaré una decisión.
Recently we did an eviction theater where we took pretty much an exact script from eviction court. So we're we really need to act this out and embody it, and had people then reflect on what did you see happening?
El inquilino debe 1,590 de renta atrasada, más 900 en servicios públicos, 150 en casos de demora.
Cuando se presentan ante una corte es un temor de ver al juez, aparte que hablan un idioma que no es el nuestro. Es importante que ellos sepan que igual ante una corte también tienen derechos.
We got another call from Redwood Mobile Home Park. It was actually a Facebook message to one of my coworkers.
Me llegó un mensaje un domingo en la noche, a las 9 de la noche por Messenger. Entonces decidimos ir a este lote de trailers que está en el sur Tucson. Íbamos a hablar con ciertas familias nada más.
Families at Redwood Mobile Home Park had endured weeks without reliable electricity and triple-digit heat. Residents contacted Poder Casas Móviles, who connected them with the Attorney General's office. Within hours of receiving notice of the issues at Redwood, the Attorney General's office responded and began an investigation.
Somebody got a hold of how they got a hold of Ray or whoever. And then I was just invited to go to the meeting.
I was I'm gonna go around and see what neighbors wants to come out. And I did, my whole line. I went to knock on their doors.
Y vinieron como unas 5 familias y empezamos a hablar ahí mismo, les explicamos quiénes somos, qué hacemos, a qué nos dedicamos, nos dijeron la situación.
The electric has been going off when the ACs are going on.
I think we had a whole week, 2 times a day.
Yeah, twice a day.
Twice a day it was happening.
When the weather was 114 and all that, that's when they would go off.
Families at Redwood Mobile Home Park endured weeks without reliable electricity or water in triple-digit heat. In August, Attorney General Mays issued a cease and desist order. That extraordinary step underscored the danger residents had been warning about all along and highlighted the few avenues for relief otherwise available to them. In response to a request for comment, Josh Court, the Central Region leader with the owner of the park, Boa Vida, blamed the electrical issues on alterations made by residents. Quote, "It was determined that there were numerous unpermitted alterations made by residents, which caused the power draw to greatly exceed the capacity of the system. We will continue to work with licensed electricians to make any repairs or changes needed to ensure the system is being used as designed and ensure that our residents do not experience interruptions caused by other residents tampering with the system."
The response from them is we have overused our electric.
Oh, yeah.
And we did get a letter from her that our meters are 50 amps and that we're overusing them.
Well, 50 amp is not enough juice to run. A water main busted. We're going to be without water for 4 hours. But the plumbers never showed up that day.
Sunday.
They didn't show up till the next day.
Monday.
So we're stuck without water.
Any of these changes, they happen only when residents are working together and when they're organized and when they're leading the efforts. The Attorney General didn't go to Redwood Mobile Home Park and say, hey, I think there might be an issue here. Residents spoke up for themselves. Residents had the courage to say, I'm already living the consequences of not speaking up, and those consequences are tremendous.
For me, it's my kids. That's why I spoke out, and I think I've been, every time somebody comes and asks questions, because I want our voices to get out there and have somebody also come and support us.
Fueled by testimonies and evidence gathered by residents and advocates, the state's top lawyer took action on electricity outages and high utility bills in several parks. But she also issued a warning to owners across the state.
I just came from Desert Haven Mobile Home Park. We started digging into some complaints from that mobile home park that led to them agreeing to pay back hundreds of dollars per person that they had been overcharging the renters for more than 7 years.
In a statement to Arizona Luminaria, Skyline Regional Manager Mike Hall said, in the case of Desert Haven, it was Skyline who, quote, identified inconsistencies in historical water billing that predated our current management practices. We then proactively notified the Attorney General's office and other relevant agencies of the corrective measures already underway.
We are sending a signal in every way possible. The cease and desist letter was a signal that I sent not just to Redwood, but to everybody else.
Redwood, all residents there. Thank you so much.
I'd like to see something in writing that says these elderly people don't have to use the computer to pay their bills.
These are people that they can't afford this.
Your landlord cannot charge you more than the utility is charging.
We have no extra money. So where does the money come from?
For residents who have waited years for answers, the Attorney General's actions have been one clear space of support. For organizers, it was one step in a broader campaign to create a robust system of accountability for mobile home tenants.
When residents know that someone has their back, they're so much more willing to speak up and make a complaint.
Yo no sabía si tenía un derecho por si me faltaba agua, si me faltaba luz o si venía muy caro el bill. Yo no sabía nada de eso.
No solamente vamos a lidiar calor y frío, tenemos que lidiar las injusticias de los dueños de ese lugar.
Parks that are united with one another, where the residents are standing together, where they're connected to Poder Casas Móviles, and where they're connected to the Attorney General's office, they're just so much safer than if one person were making a complaint on their own.
What we're going to do at the Attorney General's office, for as long as I am the Attorney General, is we are going to enforce the Arizona Landlord-Tenant Act, we're going to enforce the Mobile Home Act, and we're going to enforce the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act. So I promise you that we're going to continue to hold these landlords accountable and keep letting us know what's going on in Tucson.
For seniors on fixed incomes, working families that have called Tucson home for generations, and those just settling into their desert life, mobile homes remain Arizona's most affordable housing. When mobile home parks become unlivable, it's not just residents who lose. It's an entire ecosystem of housing at risk.
We have in the United States the American dream of home ownership, right? And we have a whole system of financial supports to basically subsidize home ownership. But manufactured housing has been kind of left out. For folks who have low incomes, housing is a real challenge in Tucson, despite housing prices perhaps being lower overall in the city. The percent of people in the bottom 20% of the income distribution that are housing cost burdened is higher in Tucson than it is in Phoenix. It's higher than the state average, and it's higher than the national average.
Affordable housing isn't just the unit itself, it's the ability to pay for all of the infrastructure that maintain and have that space actually be a livable environment.
What's happening now didn't come out of nowhere. Experts say the system was built in a way that treated these homes differently from the start. And ongoing gaps in how the Landlord-Tenant Act is enforced mean residents are still paying the price.
This was a housing type that was not treated as housing, it was treated as a form of vehicle, actually. And so you just paid like a vehicle registration tax. So there was no property taxes associated with this. And so it was very cheap, right, from that perspective. But it also brought all of the quote unquote burdens of housing, right, which is people who need roads, who need schools, who need all kinds of services. And so sometimes municipalities came to see this type of housing that as not paying its own way and being a burden. And so there was often this effort to sort of push it to the margins, to push it out of its borders so that they would not be responsible for providing services to this rapidly growing population.
It breaks my heart. They're just buying them, and they know we're sitting ducks, that it costs too much to move them, and we're gonna stay here regardless until you finally take our whole paycheck, and we have no money left.
Manufactured housing parks are a sweetheart investment. Oftentimes they're seen as being a relatively low investment way to produce returns. Because essentially what you do is you can be a landlord without being responsible for all of the upkeep of the home, right? You're actually not responsible for the condition of the home at all. There's many ways in which it's seen as a much more passive form of commercial real estate ownership.
There are still parks that are owned by individuals and by families who have been long-term in relationship with the residents who are not jacking up the rent every month. We don't hear from them very often, and they're not the ones who call. The ones who call are the ones who are saying, like, how can I extract the most amount of money from these residents?
There are more than 600 mobile home parks in Pima County. Some are large corporate owners like Skyline Real Estate, which manages more than 60 parks across the country. At least 25 of those are in Arizona, where management says residents benefit from a professional long-term owner that reinvests into the park. Others are mom-and-pop shops with 30-some mobile home spaces, like the one run by park owner Al Velez. Resident experiences differ from park to park, but without stronger accountability, those residents have no assurances of stable rents or fair resolution of disputes.
I bought the place broken down about 8 years ago.
What was the state of the park?
It was broken down. Out of 36 units, only 6 units were rented. The rest were broken windows, broken doors, needed something. People don't want to hire me because I'm in a wheelchair. This gives me a job to do. This gives me responsibility. This gives me respect. I take payments, I work with people, I give people an opportunity. Anita! She's one of my longest tenants. Yeah, you can come on. My tenants pay me rent, and I need the unit to work for what they're paying me. You know, they need to get what they're paying for.
I started out in one of the smaller campers down there, and I was just moving forward, and he's like, go check that one out. You know, like, we're a community here, you know, this is our home, and we're always looking out for, like, I got family down here.
For me, I need to make sure that my tenants are comfortable. It's a business relationship, you know, they're paying me for something, and I'm giving them something. So any issues that they have with their unit, you know, I try to fix.
Organizers are thinking big about what needs to change to make manufactured home parks stable and bustling communities. They want a regulatory agency that deals specifically with mobile homes, for master meter parks to be converted to direct utility customers, and a pathway for more resident-owned communities.
We need real systemic change. So we work with residents and also with policymakers, with city and county staff, with the Department of Public Health. We come together to try to work on tangible solutions to some of the issues that people are facing.
De lo que tengo claro, el problema no es de la comunidad, el problema es sistemático. las condiciones de vivienda son caras, la despensa, la luz, la renta, todo es caro, el salario sigue siendo bajo y la renta sigue subiendo. Entonces esa desproporción entre una cosa y la otra es lo que te lleva al desalojo, no porque la persona no tenga la capacidad o no pueda costear vivienda, la vivienda está fuera de nuestro alcance.
Mobile home parks are getting lots of investment, but they're not necessarily getting the right type of investment that is actually improving the housing. So we need to find ways to invest in this vital source of affordable housing where the return comes in the form of something other than profits or increased rents.
We want there to be more resident-owned communities, more nonprofit-owned communities, more communities that are owned by community land trusts, where really the long-term health and housing is the center, not some private equity firm making a bunch of money.
In mobile home parks across Pima County, the troubling patterns of predatory management, crumbling infrastructure, and residents fighting to stay are coming up against a new future, one where residents, advocates, and officials are rethinking what housing can look like for Southern Arizona communities.
These parks are beautiful places to live if the management agrees and wants to be there. For 40 years, we had great relations with our managers and a great place to live.
This is a vital source of affordable housing, right? If we're concerned about homelessness and housing inadequacy, then this is where we need to focus attention.
When it's done without such an extractive process, it can be quite affordable. And not just affordable, but a place where people are checking in on their neighbors. A place where you can have multi-generations living next door to one another and supporting one another in really vibrant and thriving communities.
You can't stay quiet and suffer and you paying your bills. I think that's the main, speaking out for your community. I remodeled my whole trailer to the way I liked it. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, I want to sell it or, leave because I actually fixed it the way I wanted. All the schools are really close and my mom's really close.
I love the community atmosphere. I have a beautiful garden and patio. I put about $40,000 renovating the bathrooms. My mom's right there. I really enjoy living here.
My dream is to have a house out in the country. I just gotta try to get my dreams of having my little garden, my home, where nobody can throw me off of it, because it's ours, we own it.
Yes, we need to build new affordable housing, but we also need to preserve the affordable housing that we have. And I don't think we can take for granted that if we don't start making investments in this housing, that it will always be there.
At my age, I'm still trying to fight in life and still trying to do that. I may live in this, but it's something. I have to settle for what I have and then go down the line and get my dream.